Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we have myself and Anthony breaking down some fights. We've got a decent amount to talk about, and we're going to try and spread across some of the biggest topics that we have from last week and this week. There's quite a bit going on. Last week we had UFC 318. That was on Saturday. This week we have upcoming fights of UFC Abu Dhabi. That is a fight night, but we have two really good fights to top that card. And then we had two pay-per-views announced. One had three fights announced. That was UFC 320, and then UFC 321 had the main event announced. So there's a decent amount there. Three of those four fights are title fights. So the way we're going to do this is we are going to do the main and co-main recap for last week's pay-per-view, and then we're going to do a preview of the main and co-main for this week's fight night, and then we are going to hit the fight announcements for UFC 320 and UFC 321. So that is the docket for today. So there's going to be a mix of everything from preview, recap to news. So that is the plan, and we will start right at UFC 318. We had Max Holloway become the first fighter to defend the BMF title in the main event. Dustin Poirier on the opposite side of the equation. He retired, went down by decision. I think it was 49-46 on one card, 48-47 on another, and maybe a second 49-46. But it was Holloway getting his hand raised, and I think rightfully so. Anthony, what did you make of what you saw from Holloway and Poirier?
I didn't get to watch the full fight because I was working, but or the card for that matter. But I did catch the last two rounds, so I missed a lot of the drops I saw happened earlier with both fighters. I know Max. It looks like some people are saying Max got saved by the bell when he got dropped. I think it was like 10 seconds left, and saw the one where Max had Poirier pretty hurt too. But from what I saw in the fourth and fifth, I mean, that's about what I was expecting with, I thought, Max landing more often with the good shots. Getting past the shell, I know we were worried about the Poirier's defensive style because Max had struggled with it a little bit in the second fight. But I know wanted him to go to the body more often, and I saw that happening as well. I saw Poirier, I'm sure obviously he got dropped, but in the rounds that I saw, Poirier hit Max a couple times pretty solidly, so there was the chin concerns there. But ultimately, I thought we pretty much nailed it on the thing where Holloway looked like he walked to a 4-1 decision. So, and then on the entertainment side, it was a pretty fun fight what I saw, and it didn't really seem like anyone was disappointed with that too. So that's always a nice thing when you have two legends fighting, especially it's one of their like Poirier. It was his retirement fight for him too, and I think the expectations and everything the fight delivered, and I thought everyone was happy. There was no real losers in that fight. So
Yeah, I agree. So I saw a lot of things that I liked from both fighters in this fight. On the Holloway side, I think a lot of the things that we talked about and reasons that we liked Holloway came to fruition in the X's and O's of this fight. I thought his footwork was much better this time around, and I think he has been steadily improving his footwork throughout his recent run of fights. You could go really far back into his career and kind of compare things, but I'd say over the last three fights of the Gaethje, Topuria, and Poirier, I think over those three fights, he has done a lot of work improving his footwork. It looks like those have been focal points of his training camps, and I think he's done a great job of improving at those skills. And I know Poirier's obviously a little bit older, and I don't think he takes damage quite as well as he did the first time they fought. But Holloway hit much harder this time around. When he was hurting Dustin early in that fight, it's not like he was landing massive overhands and, these big, wind ups. And he, the first time he hurt him, it was a straight down the pipe. It's not like he's hurting him with some crazy stuff that he's hitting him with. He's hitting him with standard boxing combinations and hurting him. So I really like that aspect of it from Holloway. And on the Dustin side, I've been, I don't know if critical of Dustin is the right word, but I've been open and honest about the fact that I think he's a little bit on the wash side. Um, and the real criticisms I've had for Dustin have come in the grappling department. I thought Islam was going to sub him easy. Ended up being hard, but he did get the sub, and obviously had been subbed at earlier points in his career. But this was a really strong showing from Dustin in his retirement fight. Obviously got the drop, fought really close. Um, I thought it was a good look for Dustin as he walked away from the sport, dealing with a guy who is closer to his prime. I wouldn't say Max Holloway is in his prime, but Max Holloway is much closer to his prime and still winning fights and still improving, which I don't think Dustin, it's hard to say he couldn't win fights at that level, but I don't think he's improving fight after fight. So I think for him to be that competitive with Max said a lot. And then last thing, Max Holloway did a great job using the kicks. One of the things we talked about as well was his usage of kicks in the Poirier fight. He kind of carried that over, landed a lot of kicks, and really punished Dustin when Dustin tried to throw. It was a risky game plan, but it worked. When Dustin tried to come in with big hooks, Max was sitting down on kicks and landing some really hard kicks, especially in the early rounds. That's why rounds 1 and 2 until he got dropped, where he was having a ton of success. He was hitting Dustin with kicks every time Dustin closed the distance. And that made it hard for Dustin to get his offense off. So I thought it was a great performance from Holloway. And for Dustin, I think that's a pretty good one to go out on.
Yeah, I think I was gonna say I didn't get to see, but I know we've always liked Max too for the body work that he does with his hands specifically, and I think him just consistently over these last couple fights, using his kicks a lot more and digging to the body with those as well. It's just that's a really scary sight. I think for other fighters, I don't know because I didn't see. I just wish to. I mean, maybe throw up some more head kicks for from Holloway too. Just really finish like the tier list of all levels for strikes, and I think is once again even more dangerous. But yeah, just to finish it off too. Of as in the same boat as you is thinking Poirier is still on the wash side, but it's still very commendable to be going 5 rounds with Max to even on a when you're not at your prime or whatever. So I still think, Poirier could beat a lot of fighters, but I would prefer, which I feel like they don't do enough of in this sport, is, knowing when you want to retire, like retiring on your terms, essentially. So, and I think, his legacy is really solid. Um, he's one of the better fighters that we've seen in this sport, and I think his fighting style and how entertaining he was, just and the person he was too. I think a lot of fans will look on his career and him in a good light. So I thought, and I'm glad he did get to do it in front of the home crowd too. That was pretty cool. They actually, the other last thing, they finally nailed the like the retirement whole video and promo and everything. I thought all that was spectacular because we've seen them botch that or kind of screw over some other fighters like legends when they're retiring. So I thought they hit a home run on all of that as well.
Yeah. So a quick note on the Max head kicks. Um, it is weird he doesn't throw more head kicks because he did drop Volkanovski with a head kick in their second matchup. And it's really not one that he throws a lot. I think he threw some against Taporia, but the ones he was throwing against Taporia were more like kicking his hand, um, kicking that backhand to try and dissuade some offensive boxing. But I do agree. I'd like to see him throw that more. And then on the Poirier side, I do agree. I was going to ask you that question, but you already answered it. I think this is a good time for him to retire. Like I think he can still win fights, and I think he could win some ranked matchups and some high level fights. Like um, after what we saw against Holloway, I'm not entirely sure that he wouldn't beat someone like Dan Hooker, for example. It doesn't mean that Dan Hooker can't win that fight, but if you were to tell me we were doing Hooker versus Poirier 2 right now, I'm not sure that I wouldn't pick Poirier. And that's a top 10 matchup. And there's other guys like he could beat Chandler if they decided to make that fight. And it's not to say he beats everybody. And I think that's the point here is he can walk away now. And being a guy who has taken as much damage as he's taken, it's not like he's been in easy fights. It's not like he's getting takedowns and controlling guys for 15 minutes with top position. He's getting in scraps. And fans love him for that, but that's also the one that makes it harder on your body. And I think that he's clearly on the decline, and you can walk away now while you're declining rather than a year or 2 years from now when that decline has gotten you to the point where you're now losing to guys who you would have never lost to, and you're taking more damage and maybe even the worst damage of your career. Sometimes guys, go out there a couple too many times, and that's when they're taking some of the big damaging shots because they can't move out of the way of stuff anymore. So I think it's a good call, and I agree that I thought the retirement was a pretty good one as far as video goes, and having him lay his gloves down. It was in his home state, so I thought there were a lot of positives here for Poirier while he's walking away. So, and like you said, fans will love him, and he's going to be a big name for as long as he is present, or he is going to be a big name in the sport, even though he's not actively fighting. And sounds like he'll still have some life in TV, and he'll stick around and do some of that type of stuff as well. So, and then over on the Holloway side, what do you want to see from Max Holloway moving forward? There's a lot of fresh faces. He's fought Poirier, who's obviously now retired, so that doesn't really make a difference. He's fought Topuria, which is kind of unfortunate for him based on where he's at, and he's fought Gaethje. Aside from that, he hasn't really fought any of these lightweights. The exception would be Charles, but that's one of those that was so long ago and ends in injury, and people don't really count that as a fight. So looking at Max, what do you want to see next? Is it a title fight? Is it a BMF fight? Is it a fight without the BMF on the line? What are you looking at next for Holloway?
Yeah, that's good because there are kind of so many options for him. He called out, Topuria a little bit, or at least acknowledged that. I think he'd be ready for a title fight, even at the new weight class. And I actually hadn't really fully looked yet. I guess you don't know what to do with. You would have to assume maybe Armin's getting the next shot, so that can't be booked. Otherwise, I would already start looking at like a title elimination fight for Holloway, that is. So like him versus Armin, and then winner gets to fight for the belt. But if I'd imagine they're doing Armin next, I think since you would think Oliveira will probably not get another title shot. So I think a Oliveira Max BMF fight would be pretty big, both fan favorites, and I also think that would be a tip of the cap to Oliveira for how special he was on his run and how big of a fan favorite he became. I think that would still sell pretty good, and then I believe if they get I guess they're both former champions too, so they get the pay-per-view points anyways. But I think that would be a big one. And then you'd have to start digging for like a Dan Hooker and Patty and all that too after that. So I would definitely go Armin. Armin is a fight I'd make if we're going for who should fight for the title next, for the next title challenger. And then I do think maybe a Charles Oliveira BMF fight. If you want to just keep making Max fight BMF fights, I think that's the other route maybe.
Yeah, I would say that if we're going BMF, and he's going to defend that title, I think that Charles is the best option. I think the other guy that I would look at from a BMF title is Hooker, but I think that gets in the way of, should Hooker be fighting a guy who, if Hooker were to beat Max, he'd be fighting for the belt. That doesn't really feel right to me. So I would lean towards it being Oliveira. And I think that's a fight that I think a lot of people would get behind, and I think it makes a level of sense. And then they can figure out, all right, are we doing Armin? Are we doing Gaethje? Are we doing both? Like when I say both, obviously not at the same time, but maybe they decide they want to run Gaethje and then Armin, and neither of those guys needs to fight again. There's really a lot of questions in the title picture. So it makes it hard to say exactly what they should do with Holloway if you're looking at it from a number one contender perspective. Because if they give it to Gaethje, then all of a sudden, give the title fight to Gaethje, then all of a sudden a number one contender fight against Armin makes a level of sense for Holloway. And that'd be one that if he were to beat someone like Armin, like I get that he already lost it to Poirier, but that makes him pretty stone clear. Like there's no way arguing that he should fight for the title if he can beat Armin. So sorry. I just think that would be something that would be. I think there's a lot of options, but it looks like the BMF is going to be the way they're going to be trending. I don't think he's getting a title shot, so I think Oliveira BMF is the one that makes the most sense, and they could do some other things with Armin, without him fighting a guy like Holloway. Holloway's got a lot of options. You can do a lot more exciting things with him than having him fight Armin. As much as I think Armin's an intriguing guy and can being intriguing matchups, it just doesn't feel like the UFC wants to use him that way, which sucks for him, but I think it's the situation he's in at the moment. And obviously Dustin's already booked, so I don't have anything else here to add for the UFC 318 main event. I liked what I saw from Holloway, and I think we're both pretty in line that BMF fight for Oliveira makes a good level of sense.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it is tough. I was looking at those rankings. We need some new lightweights because some of these guys are just old, and I do not want to see them in there. Like, and then you just have like Joel Alvarez sitting at 15, and it's like, well, there's more of him too, or more people like him. Let's just get them in there. But yeah, I'd agree. I thought great main event of the pay-per-view, lived up to it, and then I'm not like if Holloway wins another fight, I'm personally fine watching him versus Poirier again. So I wouldn't be opposed, but I do think you can get some more BMF fights going, and yeah, Charles would be a fun one too. I think it's just tough because even though Holloway's getting older, he's still capable of being champion. To where you kind of want to start putting the older guys in like the legacy fights, the fun, entertaining BMF fights, and it's like, yeah, we can still do that, but he can also still win a championship here. So you gotta like kind of go back and forth with it. But either way, I think there's no real wrong answer for the next Holloway fight. So.
Yep, I agree. Let's swing down to the co-main event. And like you kind of said earlier, you were working, so I can take the load here from what we saw from a fight perspective. Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov. This was a really good performance from Paulo Costa. I ended up taking Paulo Costa, and I ended up putting Paulo Costa in best bets. And when we recorded last week, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday, and I was sitting here going, man, I might just fall in the Paulo Costa trap again, knowing that, that was a risky endeavor. But Paulo did everything that I want to see Paulo doing in a fight. He was active, which was the number one thing. He was throwing his hands. He was mixing in his kicks. Good selection. He did a good job of crowding Roman Kopylov, so it made it hard for Kopylov to get off with his powerful kicks and his quick kicks because he does kick the body really, really hard. But Costa was more active and did a good job of crowding him. And then Kopylov struggled to get off his hands because Costa was landing his hands and he was landing them harder. And he landed a few counters. I don't know if the official scorekeepers what they counted for knockdowns, but he had Kopylov hurt badly in round 1 and round 2. And so he almost got the knockout on 2 different occasions. Round 3, Paulo gassed a little bit, which I didn't love, but I also think it's a product of how active he was, which if that's the issue we're having with Paulo, where he's kind of struggling in round 3 because he was so active in the first 2 rounds, like I'll take that over him standing there and being a punching bag and not getting tired. because that's the issue we were having previously. So that's a better issue to have. And the flip side of that is, well, he was also tired. Kopylov was also tired because Kopylov doesn't have great cardio, but Costa was digging to the body with kicks. He was throwing hands to the body. He was doing a lot of things to make Kopylov tired as he got tired. So I thought it was a really smart performance from Costa, which I don't say much. I thought it was an active performance, a good performance. And this is probably the best I've seen Paulo Costa in a long time. I thought he looked good in the Whittaker fight, despite it being a loss. But as far as a winning performance goes, this was a better showing than his Rockhold fight. And then you're looking prior to that, his last win was Yoel Romero. So you're got to go back a while for him to look this good. And he's still only 33. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we see more of this Paulo Costa moving forward, because that would be in the middleweight division. A guy like Paulo Costa is a lot of fun and he's very useful.
Yeah, it's unfortunate I missed this one. The one time I can't watch, Paulo decides to have a phenomenal performance, because I think I picked him 3 out of his last 4 fights, with that one being against Whittaker, where I didn't go with him. But I know, and I checked on Twitter that I saw up the body, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's already a great sign. And then back to, well, and which we always say too, because for how big and strong and much of a power puncher is, he actually has the finesse to go to the body with a multitude of shots too, which has always been one of the things that I've liked about him too. But and like you were saying too, if his issue is gassing in the third because of his output in the first and two, I would say there's probably a good chance he won 1 and 2 then, which is, so like, it's a fair strategy if he were to do that. So I did end up going Kopylov because I just didn't want to be disappointed again. But maybe that's what it is too. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I'll bet against him next, or pick him next fight. Pick against him next fight, and he'll have another great performance. But that is, I did think it was a reach for him to be co-maining, but I'm glad he delivered with a good performance, and I'm definitely more excited to get to fully watch that the fight that happened, the Kopylov fight. I would like to watch all 15 of that, but then I'll be excited for Costa's next fight as well. So
Yeah. And then moving forward for Costa, I think the division's kind of in a weird spot because you have, I'll just say for argument's sake, well, first of all, please be active. I don't need a one fight a year from Costa. I'd like to see him in there again before the end of the year. Hopefully even sooner than December. Hopefully we're getting like in October, November, something in preferably late fall, maybe early winter. But the division is kind of in a weird spot. We did just have Brendan Allen beat Marvin Vettori on the prelims of this card. So I don't think Brendan Allen's a terrible name, considering they're 10 and 11, and they both won against guys who were ranked in that lower portion of the rankings. Then you have Jared Cannonier versus MVP. I don't hate Paulo fighting the winner of that, or even the loser of that. I could justify and I'd understand. And you have Delite fighting Anthony Hernandez. And like, I'm not sure that I love either Costa fighting either of those guys. It's just there's more fun things out there, like some of the other fights that I mentioned. And then maybe it's a little bit of a stretch if Kyle Brawlha were to lose to Nasruddin Imavov. I think that would make a level of sense. On the flip side, if Imavov were to lose, I don't think he would slide all the way down to Costa, considering he's got that win in the bank over Izzy. So the division is kind of in a weird spot with a lot of guys who are booked. But right now, I think, Brendan Allen and then Cannonier or MVP. I think those are some of the names that stand out to me as guys that I'd like to see Costa fight.
And I think those are fair too, because as much as, even though we like Costa, he doesn't quite deserve the big jump for how inactive and how inconsistent he's been as well inside the octagon when he does fight. So I do think that, and you can make that same case about Brendan Allen too, not about inactivity, but he'll put 2 together and then kind of drop 1 too. So I think the Brendan Allen fight makes some sense, although they are smack dab right next to each other now. Cannonier's a fair one, been on a losing streak, but he's lost to, what is it, Imavov and Braujo, who are now fighting. Whoever wins that probably fights for the belt next. So that's a kind of an unfortunate one for Cannonier, but I do like that little 7 spot. But yeah, I think both of those make sense. And I agree with you that Imavov, I don't think he'd slide that much, but Barajo at 6, even if he loses, that would make sense. The last thing I was going to say too, I like checking the rankings. It tells me to not miss Crawford Canelo, and it's like, thanks, Dana. Why don't you promote the UFC, please? I'm gonna watch that fight, but yeah, thanks for making me see that when I'm looking up UFC rankings. that was it.
The Crawford Canelo thing is crazy because the fight's not happening for a fairly long time. Like we've got another month and a half at least of Canelo Crawford promos and stuff, which I get, but I mean, showing me a Crawford Canelo promo before the UFC press conference, I'm like, all right, well, yeah, let me mark my calendar real quick. Like, we got a little bit of time here. Then again, it's not Power Slap, so how much can I really complain? Because I would rather see Canelo Crawford than Power Slap. So
that is 1,000% true. Or yeah, it's bad that this also wouldn't be a problem if Dana just like cared more about the UFC and was like trying on some of these fight nights and matchmakings and stuff like that. Last card, top to bottom, or at least the whole main card, not a main card. That was a main card with a BMF title at the top too, like, which is crazy. Which I will say, when we talk about these next fights upcoming that got announced, that's it's a breath of fresh air for UFC fans. But yeah, it's tough when Dana's putting more effort into promoting a boxing fight in a power slap league than at UFC, it seems. So, but that's 2025 UFC for you.
yeah, there's been some rough things on the promotion side that have frustrated me with Dana. We'll just leave it at that. All right, we'll close the show on UFC 318 there. I don't really feel that you obviously were working, but I don't really feel the need to touch on any of the other fights. There were a handful of notable performances. I did write final thoughts for the card, so there's some final thoughts in there on some of the other fights, but a lot of these were either very weird fights, like the D-Rod and Kevin Holland fight felt very weird to me, even though it was a good fight. And then a lot of the other things, aside from Daniel Zellhuber not doing anything and just standing there and kicking arms, a lot of other things that, even though they were exciting, pretty, outcomes that were easy to foresee, like a Jimmy Crute submission over a guy who can't grapple, or Ryan Spann getting a guillotine, or a Teba Gautier knocking a guy out and he's, minus 800. So a lot of the stuff that we saw was pretty chalky, aside from a handful of weird performances. Victorian Allen was a much better scrap than I thought that was going to put on one fight of the night, so credit to them for that. But not a ton to talk about on the rest of the card. So I guess I did just kind of hit a final thoughts section there, but we can leave it at that because it's not anything too in depth there. So, all right. Moving on to UFC Abu Dhabi. Great card this weekend for a fight night. I wonder if it's taking place in Abu Dhabi. I wonder why the fight card is so good. What a coincidence. Purely coincidence, but I won't complain too much because we do have good fights in our hands. A lot of ranked matchups. We'll focus on the main event and the co-main event because those are super important fights for those divisions. Two former champions fighting guys who are looking to rise up the rankings. One of which, Reinier de Ritter, has done his stuff outside of the UFC. The other hand, Marcus McGee, fresh face, inexperienced, looking to take on Petr Yan. Two very interesting fights. We will start at the main event. Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ritter. What do you make of this matchup, and what do you think? What do you think the stakes are to be had here?
I think it's a pretty fun matchup for the two. Whittaker, we've really seen him fight just about everyone that. So, you know, I'm here for any Whittaker matchup. That's one of my favorite fighter in the division, one of my favorite fighters overall. So I think it's perfect with a fresher face like RDR, and RDR's coming off of the Bo Nickel. I can't remember if it was upset if he was underdogged, but yeah, I know some people aren't big fans of Bo Nickel though, so I know they were rooting for that, but. I thought he has his own wave and he's been looking good, finishing these fights and stuff. So I think it's kind of a really good. Although I think they're both like 34 though, so it's not. I can't say like prospect young guy because as you mentioned, he did a lot outside the UFC. But I think it's a relatively fun fight between Whittaker, who's still hanging on for that maybe one more chance at the belt or one more last run, and this is a big spot here for him to immediately get right back on track against someone who's surging and relatively new to the UFC, but is doing really well in his fight so far. And for RDR, this is a huge win for him if you can get Whittaker. I don't know quite if you're next for the belt anymore or you're fighting next with a win over Whittaker, but you're one fight away probably at least with a win over Whittaker. So I think it's a big spot for both of them, and it'll really be it can catapult RDR into title talks immediately. And then for Whittaker, it could really probably start questioning, like, one last title run and if he's going to be a gatekeeper now, or maybe just the rest of his career too. I know some fighters that have been doing it for a while don't like to fight if there's no chance for a belt. So we'll see what that looks like too after this one.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting matchup, and I don't hate to step up in competition um, for Reinier de Ritter. Maybe I would have liked to see him fight one guy in that 10 to 15 spot of the rankings first, but Gerald Mearshart, Gerald has plenty of flaws, but I think it was a weird matchup for de Ritter, and I think he handled it well. Bo Nickel, another really good grappler, I think he handled it well. Um, and he's got enough experience outside of the UFC where, yeah, maybe you're not on Robert Whittaker's level. Maybe he is. Um, but he's got enough experience at a high level outside of the UFC to where he's not being completely thrown in here out of nowhere. Um, and another thing to note with the Ritter is he's got so much experience at light heavyweight and heavyweight with those weight cutting rules over in one championship is now at 185. He's in a much better spot for him, fighting guys who are much smaller than him. He's one of the bigger guys in the weight class. Um, I think there are guys who could match him, but for now, everyone he's fought, he's decently bigger than. So I think it's a appropriate matchup, and I think it is a little bit weird on the Robert Whittaker side of things, but I think Whittaker's at the point in his career where it's like, geez, he's fought a lot of these guys. Um, so it makes a little bit more sense than kind of when I first saw this matchup. I didn't really get it, and then when you think about like the guys Whittaker has and hasn't fought, makes a little bit more sense, especially when seems like Sean Strickland won't fight him. Um, and some of the other guys he hasn't fought, um, like an Imavov, uh, like a Brawlho, those guys are fighting each other to try and get a title fight. So I understand how they got to this point for Whittaker, and I don't hate the matchup at all. So I'm pretty happy with this one, especially considering um, he's coming off that loss recently to Chimaev. So I get why he's in this position rather than fighting one of the top guys.
Yeah, and I think this fight might do more with some of the hype. I don't know if that's close circles rather than the wide perspective from like UFC people or fight fans. But I think a win over RDR would do more than a win over Strickland, it feels like. But also, that Whittaker fight, that Whittaker, yeah, that would be my go to for him to fight Sean. Um, and that Strickland fight would be perfect for Whittaker because he wouldn't have to worry about getting like knocked out or anything either. So it's actually would be like a perfect matchup for him at his age, coming off that freak little accident with his jaw exploding or whatever. But nevertheless, I do think I'm gonna bank on the step up in competition that Whittaker. I mean, he's still only. Well, we'll see. Chimaev and DDP are fighting, but before that, I mean, it's losses to Izzy and DDP. So I mean, he's still losing only to championship level fighters, and you know, that caliber of fighters. So I think I'll obviously probably be biased, and I'll definitely be going with Whittaker. I think, he still has the striking advantage. You're getting more and more concerned with speed and durability at his age and with every coming fight. But I do think he still has the grappling defense, I think, to hopefully, avoid what RDR is going to try to get through. And I don't think RDR quite, although he may be a little bit bigger and stuff, I think that obviously him and Hamzat style wrestling and takedowns are a bit different too, but then Hamzat does kind of have that otherworld strength too. And plus, I thought Whittaker was doing really well in that fight, defending until that. Not that he would have completely got out of that, but I don't think you've never seen him tap in 1 second, 1 millisecond ever before. So I just think that was kind of the freak, unfortunate thing, that the injury that happened. But yeah, I'm gonna be banking that Whittaker can keep this fight on the feet, or if not, at least continually scramble and get up if he is taken down, and then hopefully the chin can hold up in the striking exchanges. But I've always liked all his weapons, whether it be the in and out from range. He can kick to all three levels. His hands, he actually goes to the body as well and everything. So I think the blitzing style could maybe give RDR some issues as well. So
Yeah, I'll throw out the betting odds to start. Betting odds have it -158 Whittaker, +124 Reinier to Ritter. So pretty closely lined fight there. And this is a really interesting one and a really tough one for me to call, in my eyes, because I agree with everything you said on the Whittaker side. But I think both of these guys have things that can cause serious problems for the other one. On the Whittaker side, like you said, the in and out, combinations, speed, like that Ikram Ali fight, like, showed he's still got the power to knock guys out. And I think he could use that to keep it at range, use that distance management, land a ton of shots, and really find a lot of success and even finish the fight with a knockout. Conversely, I think Robert Whittaker struggles against guys who are really physical. I think he's got probably the technique to defend, but I think he struggles most against guys who are really, really, really physical. Adesanya didn't fall into that category. And at a different portion of his career, that wasn't as big of the case. But now he's a little bit been through the ringer a little bit more. He's a former welterweight, and he's aging now. And I think that, if DeRitter can get this on the inside and get to the clinch and land some shots in the clinch and maybe land some takedowns, I think he could wear on Whittaker a lot and maybe even hurt him, maybe even submit him. So I can really see both guys winning this fight really dominantly. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if either of these guys end this in the first round or the first 2 rounds. Would not shock me one bit either way. And otherwise, I think we make it kind of a sloppy, Whittaker's tired because he ate some pressure. And DeRitter's kind of wore out because he got hit a lot. So I think this could get real sloppy if we don't get that early finish as well.
yeah, I think RDR is one of the ones that kind of looks not sloppy, but the goofy fighter a little bit too at times. But that would be the other thing is RDR hasn't had a fight. Not that he can't go 5 rounds and stuff, but hasn't had a fight go there. We've seen Whittaker time and time again go there, even at his age. So the submissions too, because I thought that was one of the things that I didn't quite expect. Like you said, I mean, DDP is also phenomenal with his own technique on the ground, but I thought Whittaker looked good at times against DDP on the ground, but I also thought he was getting outright beat with a couple of the transitions and stuff. And I do think there was just that size advantage, like you were saying, that Whittaker was struggling with. And then, give or take, he was also stunned in one of those situations. But yeah, it's you could be like, oh, we've seen Whittaker in there with big guys before, though. I mean, he had 2 wars with Yoel Romero. It's like, yeah, well, that was like a decade ago, though. Now, so it's a little bit different, and times have changed. But I think overall, I do think this should be a fun one as well, and I think it was pretty exciting. I think it was worth the main event for an Abu Dhabi card and such. So I'm pretty happy with this one, and I think it'll at least give one of them a chance at the belt. We'll see what happens with Imavov and Barajo too, but it gives a little bit more flavor in that top. Well, I don't want to say top 5, but I meant for that title contenders, because as of right now, it's really just those two as of right now. So I think getting another name in there would be good.
Yeah, I think at the moment you've got Brawlho and Imavov in good positions, but after that it gets a little like, ooh, like keep struggling away from the title picture. Adesanya's been sliding out of the title picture, um, and I mean, there's some other names, but Whittaker's one of those top guys, and then after that you're getting to that Cannoneer spot at 7 after the names we just listed. So, um, it's really a division that could use some fresh names. And Whittaker, I think a win here would put him one away. But, um, I think DeRitter might even get it off just a win just based on timing. But I think you may also need one more. So I really like this fight. I've been going back and forth a lot. I think I'll probably end up picking DeRitter, um, but I might swing towards Whittaker. I've kind of been going back and forth here. About a week, 2 weeks ago, I was much bigger on the idea of DeRitter winning, and then as we've gotten closer to the fight, I've opened up much more to Whittaker getting the job done. And I think if I use logic, I think I'll end up on Whittaker. But I also think there's a part of this fight where it's like, for some stupid reason, the Ritter's going to win. It's not really anything super logical, but like, there's certain guys where it's like I just gotta set the logic to the side for a minute. As dumb as it sounds, like Duplessis is. If you use logic to pick Duplessis fights for a long time, you were wrong, and that was me. Same with Marab, you were wrong. And then once you adjust your logic a little bit and set some logic to the side, you end up having much better results picking those guys. So I think the Ritter may be one of those guys, and so I think I may end up going with DeRitter unless I really, really switch positions over to Whittaker. So that's where I sit right now. Today's Wednesday, so picks will be out on Friday, but right now it's DeRitter for me. All right. And then let's swing down to the co-main event. Another massive step up in competition. This one I'm not as big of a fan of. We have Petr Yan versus Marcus McGee. Petr Yan, one of the best bantamweights of all time, on the short list at minimum. He obviously had a serious run of struggle at one point in his career. Started with the Aljamain Sterling DQ loss, and then he lost a very close decision to Sterling, where couple of the rounds he lost were him getting backpacked. In between those two Sterling losses, he had the tremendous performance against Corey Sandhagen, one of the best performances you'll get in a bantamweight fight. That was for the interim title. And then he loses that split decision to Sean O'Malley. Many people thought he won. I thought he won at the time. That's a whole nother discussion. We'll just say it was a close fight for argument's sake. And then he loses very dominantly, to Marab over the course of 5 rounds. There's been some rumors that he was injured. In hindsight, that looked correct to me. But those are just rumors, and maybe he just got outworked that badly. In the aftermath of that fight, he took off about a year, came back with victories over Song Yadong and Davison Figueiredo. Sitting on 2 consecutive wins against ranked guys. Now he finds himself in there with Marcus McGee, who Marcus McGee is 10-1 in MMA, 4-0 in the UFC. His highlight win is a win over Jonathan Martinez, where Jonathan Martinez did absolutely nothing for the course of 3 rounds. Jonathan Martinez, I rewatched the fight yesterday, and like a minute into the second round, he had thrown 18 significant strikes. Marcus McGee landed some shots in that fight, but Martinez. Then you're looking at wins over Gaston Bolanos, JP Buys, and Journey Newsom. I'd have to double check on Bolanos, but Buys and Newsom are not in the UFC. Bolanos, at best, is hanging on by a thread. So the run here for McGee has had some good performances, but the quality of competition is not Petr Yan or close to Petr Yan's level. What do you make of this matchup for Petr Yan and having it be Marcus McGee he finds himself in there with?
Yeah, I was with you on that. I didn't really like this step up in competition. I didn't really like this fight when it was booked. It just seemed like a weird. I know Jan's been around too and has fought a lot of people, but I think this division, not saying that this was a specific one, but like a Jan Song Yadong too wasn't like it's not like I don't need to see that. Like I think I'm fine with Jan fighting someone for a second time if that was the route they needed to go over reaching this far on one of the next up and coming lower ranked guys. But it is what it is too. It did open up the title shot for who we'll talk about, so that's all I really wanted. But I think, yeah, if anything, Jan's at 3. Well, for both of us, I guess I'll say for McGee, obviously you get an upset here. We just kind of saw this with Van and Royval. Huge opportunity, huge jump. You get the upset win, you might be next for the title or in one fight away, just like that. So that's the upside for McGee there. But I think here for Jan, some people arguably you're the best fighter in the world. Merab, or not best fighter in the world, sorry, best fighter in that division. Like you could still beat Merab. It didn't go your way that other fight, but you have one of the better chances, I think, than some of the other people. And certainly O'Malley getting 2 cracks at it. And I think, if anything, you're at 3. We'll talk about who has the next shot after this, and then you go out there, do what you need to do against McGee. I think you can kind of just wait for the next shot at that point against Merab. So I will say, although I think this fight is a bit of a reach and it doesn't make the most sense, I think I do want to see Jan fight for another title, and I think this should be a win where after he gets this done, I don't think he can. He has to necessarily fight again. I think he can wait it out. So,
yeah, when I look at these bantamweight rankings, there's some other fights I would have liked to see. He wanted to fight Umar, and that fight just simply didn't come to fruition. I think that would have made sense. And it just simply didn't come to fruition on the Umar side of things. They were talking about that fight for this date. But then my question is, when the Umar fight doesn't come through and you're 2-3, do we jump right to number 12, Marcus McGee? Do we jump right to that guy and that's the guy we call? Or did they decide, okay, we're going to give the title fight to Sandhagen, so we won't call him? He already fought Song Yadong. He already fought Figgy. Did you call Cheeto? Did you call Mario Bautista? Did you call Rob Font? Did you call Cejudo? Did Eamon Zahabi at the time wasn't 11? So did you call these other guys and did they say no? If that's the case, so be it. So be it in that case. But if that's not the case, I'm not really a fan of this fight. But like you said, we have Merab at the top, and if he wins, I think he gets another crack. It kind of depends how that title fight plays out, but Merab has shown that if he defends, he will be active and he will fight whoever is asked of him. He's not going to chase 145 at the moment. And I think that if Jan wins this fight, he's putting himself in a great position to fight for the title. So it makes sense for him to take this fight. in comparison to, sitting out for what would be over a year probably from his last fight to when he would get that Merab fight, assuming they were dead set on giving it to Sandhagen first. So makes sense to me as to why he's taking this fight, but it's not the best fight in the division. It is what it is. I won't complain too much because, like you said, I like to watch Petr Yan fight, and I'll take a Petr Yan fight. Now, as far as the fight itself goes, we have Petr Yan line as a massive favorite, minus 410, plus 290 is the comeback on Marcus McGee. I kind of think those odds are accurate. The only way that I could really see a McGee upset is if Petr Yan really throws away round one, because he has a tendency to throw away round one. He doesn't do it every time. People like to make it seem like he does it every time. He doesn't do it every time. If Yan throws away round one and then gets off to a slow start in two, like maybe I could see a 29-28 McGee. But I think that even if Yan starts a little slow, I think he's eventually going to show a big difference in technical ability and speed and really pick it up. The question is, does he really pick it up with 3 minutes left in the first, 1 minute left in the first, or worst case scenario, 2 minutes left in the second, for example? I think the tide's going to turn and the ball's going to start rolling down the hill for Yan. And then the question is, when does that happen? And does he get to finish before the fight ends? I think those are the two big questions here. So I like Petr Yan a lot this weekend. Shouldn't be anything too crazy. He's minus 400. So, but I have Yan. I'm going to take Yan to get a finish as well. I really like Petr Yan this weekend.
I agree. That's funny. That was my first thought. Was I think it actually is probably good for McGee that it's a 3-round fight. That definitely helps. But just like you said, though, this is one where I'm pretty confident in the odds, but we just saw last week 4 underdogs win in a row for some random reason. I think Michael Johnson was pretty high up there too. But I always like seeing Michael Johnson win though, so that was good. But I just trust the boxing and the skill. He's fought the best too, so I think he will be too much for McGee in there on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's not even that I think McGee is bad, but I think I like he would have to do the same thing Sean O'Malley did. And is he on the talent level of Sean O'Malley? Like, no. And Sean's a much harder guy to fight for Petr Yan over 3 rounds. Like, just from a length perspective, from a power perspective, from a creativity perspective, those things are all things that can hamper your ability to do damage and win 2 out of 3 rounds. Not to say McGee's bad, but he's a much more basics kind of guy. He will get a little creative, but not to the degree of Sean O'Malley by a mile. He's big for the division, but not to the degree of Sean O'Malley once again. And like, how many guys am I trusting to win 3 rounds of striking against Petr Yan, or win 2 of 3 rounds in a striking matchup against Petr Yan? Song Yadong couldn't do it. Like, I like Song Yadong striking a lot. Corey Sandhagen couldn't win rounds, pure striking. The guys who have won rounds against him have had to grapple, and Jan's not a bad grappler. People think he's a bad grappler, but his grappling-based losses are to arguably the 2 best grapplers to ever fight in the weight class. So, like, I'm not going to hold it against him too much. So, long story short, once again, just more reasons to like Yan. So, I've got Yan, and I think this is also a good opportunity to go get a finish and really have people excited for a title fight, which getting a finish is the one thing he hasn't done since coming back from his little not injury, but his little spell of losses and underwhelming performances. So I'd like to see that. All right. Now we are going to break into some fight announcements. We'll start with the UFC 320 fights. We have 3 fights here. Let's start. We'll start with just light heavyweight as a whole. We have a light heavyweight main event, and we have a light heavyweight featured bout. The co-main event will be a bantamweight title fight. So we're going to hit both the light heavyweight fights at the same time. I think that makes it a little bit easier. We have a main event title rematch, Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira. And then what I assume, this has not been stated, but I assume Yuri Prochazka and Khalil Roundtree. I assume that will be a number one contender fight. That will also be on the card. So those are the two heavyweight fights. What do you make from those two UFC 320 fight announcements for the light heavyweight division?
I was actually really happy with Pereira getting the rematch. I'm not all for all the time immediate rematches for champions, but I thought that was one that was really deserved, based off of how much he did for the UFC, with filling in on saving 3 cards, putting on magical performances in all 3. Defended his belt 3 times. Really, all you could want from a champion too, and just that added level of once again of like saving 3 cards too. I think a couple. I don't know if it was maybe short notice on some of them too, but just the stuff was not going the right way, and he stepped up every time. And then to lose that decision to Ankalaev, where he truly didn't look his best, which was one of the first times I thought you could say that in about 4 or 5 fights, where he kind of just came out pretty flat, or struggled with the hand fighting from Ankalaev too. Not that Ankalaev didn't fight really good as well, but I think to do all that, especially at Pereira's age, and to maybe not get that immediate rematch, I think was going to be kind of tough for him. So I think he gets his chance to right that wrong here. And then Ankalaev also gets a chance to really stamp that win with the second defeat, with the second time of beating Pereira. So overall, I was pretty happy that this is the way they went. And two, I don't think any of the other prospects were or no, I shouldn't say prospects, but any of the other 2 through 10 will say were really deserving of that title fight necessarily over Pereira too. Is the other way I would go about that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a fan of rewarding him for the things that he did to help the UFC. And then, like you said, like if we had another guy that was, on a long win streak and this guy deserves a title fight, I'd be in a different position. But the number one guy we could give a title fight is a guy who lost in Yuri Prochazka, is a guy who lost to Pereira twice. So it makes it a little bit harder to advocate for that guy to get the title fight. It just doesn't really feel right. So I'm all in on this rematch. It makes sense to me. We book Yuri and Roundtree on the same exact card. Give them the opportunity of putting on a good performance and setting themselves up to fight the champ. I think that makes sense as well. I'm happy about that. And something happens, somebody has to pull out of the main event. You've got Yuri or Cleo there to slide in and take that fight. So I think that makes sense, and I think Yuri and Khalil is a smart number one contender fight as well. I think that's going to be a fun fight while they're in there, and I think that's also one that makes logical sense. Carlos Ulberg getting left out of the kind of the odd man out of musical chairs, but based on his last performance, yeah, exactly. Based on his last performance, like that's kind of what's going to happen. So I'm not really too mad about that, even if he's now, I don't even know what he's going to be doing, but I'm not going to complain about him being the odd man out.
They haven't fought. Prochazka and Roundtree have not fought yet, right?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I like that fight too. I was gonna say before you mentioned it, one of the best things about this, I think, is that Ulberg isn't fighting for the number one contender fight too, which is nice. But I do think, I guess worst case scenario would maybe be a Pereira and Prochazka win, because I don't know if you would want to see that fight a third time. Because now all of a sudden I want to go, Pereira didn't look that good, but I guess if he were to beat Ankalaev, he would probably look better. But because I'd be like, oh, maybe Prochazka can finally get him. But also Pereira just might be his kryptonite too. But regardless, I do think if Pereira were to lose this and finally have to give up the amazing run he was on, you still have Prochazka, Ankalaev, Prochazka, Roundtree. Ulberg is there to, so there are some fights to make too, which I think is a good spot for this division. And I think there were maybe a couple more options with Olberg or given someone. I mean, Rakic and Blahovic aren't there, and Dominic isn't quite back on his run yet to be in those. But I was pretty happy with the two fights they made, and I think it'll be that's a really great card too. And I you know we've talked about this before too. We like when they do the number one contenders fight right under on the same pay per view as the title fight. I think it just makes everything so much more seamless, and it's a perfect way to sell both fights as well too, or the next fight on top of that as well.
Yeah, and I also think it makes even more sense when that next fight is a fight like Roundtree Prohashka. It's probably going to be a good one. Like, just I have a like whoever wins that fight's probably going to look impressive. It'll probably be a fun fight. So that makes it even better. Like when you have Van and Royval out there, like there's no way that fight wasn't going to be a banger. So then you can immediately sell title shot and a deserved title shot as well. So no complaints there. Co-main event, we're beating around the bush on this one. Merab Dvalishvili is going to defend the bantamweight title against Corey Sandhagen. I know we're probably both stoked about this matchup. I know I am. The podcast has been supporters of the Sandhagen experience, and I think he earned this one. This is going to be his first time fighting for the Undisputed Championship. His only title fight was that interim title loss to Petr Yan, and he's going to have an opportunity to try and crack the Merab Dvalishvili puzzle. And maybe he can, maybe he can't, but he deserves the opportunity to go in there and take that fight. And for Merab, if you're trying to craft out like an all-time run, Corey Sandhagen's a guy who you want that name on your resume as far as like making a run in the bantamweight division. So I think it's going to be a great fight. I'm going to be really interested in breaking that down, watching that fight. I'm pumped all the way around, and I think both guys are looking down the barrel of an outstanding opportunity, obviously for Sandhagen to get his hands on the belt for the first time, and doing so against arguably the best bantamweights of all time. But for Merab, like adding another title defense is always going to be great for him. But I think Sandhagen is like undisputably, undeniably the best guy that he has not fought. And I think there's a pretty big gap between Sandhagen and whoever you would say is next in terms of the next best guy he hasn't fought. It might be Song Yadong just off the top of my head, but Corey beat Song Yadong. So I think him adding Sandhagen's name to his resume would be ultimately impressive, and I think that would leave no argument that he is the bantamweight GOAT, even though a lot of people believe that right now. I still like Dominic Cruz, call me a little bit old-fashioned, but if he goes out there and beats Sandhagen, you wouldn't hear an argument from me.
Yeah, exactly like you said. I think this is the fight. I know a little bit. It's good. I'm glad. I also just Sandhagen's such a good fighter and such an entertaining fighter that you want him to have the chance to fight on the biggest stage, and I'm glad that that's finally happening. Um, I am worried as a Sandhagen fan that in his two other biggest chances, slipped up against Jan, slipped up against Umar. So he kind of has lost his two biggest fights up to this point, but now none of that matters when he actually has a title fight now, and he has the chance to, like you said, crack the Merab code, which has looked, pretty untouchable right now in some of these other fights. But I'm excited for this one. I do think Merab is great. Like one of my friends asked me, "Do you think Corey wins?" And I was like, "Well, I can't confidently say anyone beats Merab, but I do think Sandhagen has a great chance of winning." I think he offers the striking upside that people get excited for when in the Sean matchups. I think Sandhagen offers that level of upside on the feet. Yet I don't think he has as big of holes on the ground and with his takedown defense like Sean. So I think his more balanced style, while maybe Sean is the better striker overall, I think his more balanced style gives him a better chance of victory against Merab, and he's put the work in where Sean or some other people have kind of got a fight here, then boom, they get the title shot. Sandhagen is one of those people that has been putting the work in, fighting everybody in this division. So now it's finally his time, and we're gonna hope for the 50-50 series that he's been working on a lot more. And I think he just tore was it Figgy or not Cheeto, it's
Yeah.
Figgy, right? His ACL. Although if you tear Marav's ACL in a fight, I don't think he would notice, which is kind of scary. But I do overall think Sandhagen has the tools to get it done. And I think this should be a really good fight too. Hopefully, a really entertaining one. I know Marab finally got that finish in the last one, which is all I was asking for. I love that. But and with some of the other Marab fights, they can be a little one-way traffic. Hopefully, this one, if it does go all 5-2, will be a little bit more back and forth with some highlights on both sides. So
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and I won't get too deep into my breakdown, but I think what O'Malley presents in far as danger is pure power. Um, with the standard shots, straights and counters and stuff like that. And not to say he can get really creative and land knees and things as well. But Corey is a lot. I think he finds ways to hurt people, even if he doesn't have the most power in his hands. I think he's much more consistent at landing those creative shots against higher quality opposition than O'Malley. Those knees, he's got flying knee knockouts, a spinning hook kick knockout. He's got those against ranked opponents, albeit those guys were a little bit older. But and then he cuts people, with the elbows and with the knees, and he finds ways to do damage. And he's out there trying to tear ACLs, and he's trying to land chokes. And I really like all that from Corey. And I also think that Merab's a tough guy to crack. From a game planning perspective. But personally, Corey Sandhagen, I'll put in the category of guys I really respect their fight IQ, game planning, and thought process. And I don't think he's going out there willy nilly, hoping and, just sitting down on one shot. I think he's going to have an expansive game plan with a lot of ideas and thoughts and plan A's and plan B's and plan C's and plan D's. Doesn't mean he wins, but I don't think he's going to be unprepared. I don't think he's going to be unintelligent when he's in there on top of his danger factor. So there's a lot of things that I think can create an upset, which it will be. The betting odds have come out. Merab's a heavy favorite. Would be a upset for Corey. And I think he's got some of the intangibles that I think create that opportunity. So pumped to see that. And that's going to be one of my matchups I'm most excited for until the day that it happens. So pumped for that one. All right. Last fight announcement, UFC 321. UFC 320 was going down in Las Vegas, by the way. UFC 321, this one going down in Abu Dhabi. Tom Aspinall versus Surreal Gone. This is, we've been touching and looking and, debating, booking this fight, it feels like, from the UFC for years. Surreal Gone said no thank you at least once, maybe twice. But now that Tom has that undisputed gold, Surreal's taken the fight, and this will be the first heavyweight undisputed title defense or attempt of Aspinall's career. And John Jones is now out of the picture, so heavyweight division is moving on with its new champion, and Surreal Gone is getting the first shot. What do you make of the situation as a whole?
I'm trying to pull up. I never got to look at the heavyweight. I don't. It's crazy that Shogun is getting a third attempt at the belt. Also, because this confused me. Didn't Dana do the whole Gon's last fight was Volkov, right? So and Volkov got robbed, and Dana said, "Yeah, that's horrible. We'll fix this." I don't know if he's too wrapped up in Canelo and Power Slap or he just hates Volkov too. Maybe he just doesn't care. But I was surprised when this came out. I didn't a third time for the belt, but regardless, I do still think Gon is really talented, and once again, he beats a lot of the heavyweights. Heavyweights suck. There's maybe a couple other people here, so that whole spiel. But I think just at the end of the day, the best thing is the division's moving forward, and we get to see arguably the best fighter in the world. I guess you don't have to say pound for pound when he's the heavyweight, but Tom Aspinall, really, he's already had an amazing, legendary run without the belt. I'd say a path to getting a title fight. It doesn't get much better than what Tom was doing to a lot of these fighters and how quick he was finishing them. So now would be curious to see what he can do with the belt and what type of legacy he can create for himself there, and and how many wins he can put together. And as much as I do think Tom is, uh, well, I was gonna say I still think Gon sure could give him some problems. I think Gon is good enough. Blah blah blah. Hopefully, not to just completely write it off like Tom is just killing him in 1 second. Let's add a little bit of stakes to this, but. Yeah, I'm just happy that Tom's finally getting his chance and all that John Jones stuff is over with. So
Yeah, and I think I know I'm not a fan of just in a vacuum of Gon getting a title fight off of a Volkov, a robbery, and a win over Sergey Spivak. Ooh, he beat Sergey Spivak. Um, and like I could really care less about the things that he's done since losing to John, but he is a benefactor of John Jones, like retiring two of the top guys in John and Stipe. But he's also a benefactor of Aspinall's success. Like, who are we going to have Aspinall fight? Well, so Volkov should have beat Gon. Well, we'll just pretend that wasn't the case because Aspinall's already beat Volkov, and we don't really want to book that fight for a second time. So we can just pretend that wasn't the case, and we'll give Gon the title shot. But if you extend it further than that, he's beat Curtis Blades. He has beat Sergey Pavlovich. He has beat pretty much all of these guys near the top, aside from Gon. And then the next highest ranked guy would be Jelton Almeida at 5. And I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to give Jelton Almeida a title shot either. So Gon just kind of gets to fight for the title. And it is what it is. I'm not, I for as much as Surreal Gon annoys me and I think it's dumb, I understand why this happened. And if I was in the UFC shoes, I probably would have made this same decision. So I won't criticize it too much. It's just more of a issue with the heavyweight division as a whole rather than the actual decision that was made. So I think this division is going to get interesting real soon. We've got Waldo Cortez Acosta fighting Sergey Pavlovich. And so, I mean, Waldo might be staring down a title shot here fairly soon if he can get that win. And I believe that's on the Shanghai card, which out of all the fights, we have Zhang Ming Yang and Johnny Walker in the main event. And then we've got Aljamain Sterling and Brian Ortega in the co-main. And we've got Pavlovich and Waldo on the card. So that's going to be an entertaining card, one in some way, shape, or form. But we also have Volkov and Almeida. They are going to fight on this UFC 321 card. So that's also taking place on the same day. So that gives Almeida and Volkov as well is getting to the point for him where he may just earn that Aspinall rematch as well. So kind of got two fights lined up where we could have another heavyweight contender lined up. That being said, those have to go through and kind of depends on, you get a good performance out of some of those guys and who knows what they're doing with John and the White House. And there will be even more questions once this fight is across the finish line. But for now, Aspinall and Gon is the right move in my opinion.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you what you said because Almeida could get a title shot. That wouldn't be necessarily because he specifically deserved it. So I'm fine with that. I did not think my boy Waldo Cortez Acosta would be in title talks in 2025. And I don't know if I didn't know there that Pavlovich matchup. He just struggled with Spivak. So I just liked Acosta when I thought he was just a heavyweight I could watch. I didn't think he would achieve these heights of possibly being top 5. And I'm starting to get scared now when he's going up in competition. But Tom Aspinall Cortez Acosta would do wonders. That would be wild. But yeah, like you said, I agree. It's divisions. It's getting a little shisty. Tom is. That's what sucks too. Well, that's what happens. It's when John Jones is fighting once, like for 3 years, and you do have someone that cleans out the whole division without the belt on him, like acting as the champion, even though he doesn't have the belt. So that is unfortunate. But the other one is Espinal hasn't fought Lewis, right? So I think, people froth at the mouth for a Lewis title fight again just to watch him maybe KO someone. So I think there's some avenues to go. But after you break it down with Volkov, Almeida, and Costa, Pavlovich, I didn't know. That is at least gives me hope for in a division where stuff has been stalled out for years upon years. That after one title fight, we already should have another one kind of in the works, and that's at least I feel like the least you could ask for heavyweight in this moment. So I'm happy with it.
I agree. I think they did a good job of. We'll pounce on the now that John's gone. These guys have not been fighting, so we'll get a couple guys booked. They've got 2 swings at it, so doesn't mean they go. They might not even go 1 for 2. They might go 0 for 2 in terms of getting one of these future title contenders across the line. But that being said, I appreciate them taking shots and not just sitting around and twirling their fingers. So I think it makes a level of sense what they're trying to do. Now it's in the fighters' hands, and that has largely been the issue with the heavyweight division. Is it's the fighters have been disappointing, and even when they haven't, the judges will mess something up, or John won't fight somebody, or somebody else won't fight somebody. Gon will sit on the side. So I think the UFC, for as much as flack as I give them at this point, I can't really argue with what they're doing. Will it work? You can only ask so much. So maybe not. We'll see. That's what we have today. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and sticking with us as we hit across a couple different cards and some news and everything. If you want more thoughts on the upcoming UFC Saudi Arabia card or Saudi Arabia Abu Dhabi, go to vendettasportsmedia.com. We'll have the preview up on Friday. So there'll be every main card fight. There'll be a breakdown for, and then we will have everyone's picks in there as well. And then I will have best bets up as well. And like I said, there's some recap stuff for last week's pay-per-view. So you can hit all of that at vendettasportsmedia.com. Otherwise, make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube and come back next week. I don't think there's a fight. I think we might have a week off from a fight card. I'd have to double check. But we do obviously have this UFC Abu Dhabi card that we can recap. So there will be something to talk about next week, whether it be UFC Abu Dhabi or another fight card or news. Maybe I doubt it based on the news we got this week, but there will be something next week across one of these fight cards. So thank you. Make sure to tune in next week.